following the same format as we did this morning. I'm going to introduce each one of the speakers. They're going to give their talks, and then we'll open to questions from the audience as well. So first, we have Leonel Moura. So Leonel is a pioneer, a very renowned pioneer in the application of robotics and AI, artificial intelligence in art. In 2001, he created the first robots arm able of generating actual unique paintings. And then robot action painter RAP RAP in 2006 came into the world, and it's actually part of the American Museum of Natural History in New York as part of their permanent exhibit as well. He has been featured and is featured in numerous private and public collections worldwide. He's a member of the Portuguese Society for Robotics as well. So interesting mix of disciplinarity, obviously he promotes this new kind of art based on machine creativity, which we're very interested and keen on hearing on. So I'll give you the floor.
Already?
Please go ahead. Yes, okay. Please go ahead.
Hello, thank you for the invitation. Thank you to my colleagues. I believe that, of course, as he was saying, I'm working with artificial intelligence and robotics for many years. Of course, a very different kind of artificial intelligence, because this one that we will be speaking is quite new. It was, but anyway, it was already from the start. I wanted to see if it was possible to make creative machines. That means that it was a kind of artificial intelligence, by the way, very much based on the behavior of ants. So based on an algorithm of ants, but that could generate something new, something creative. So it was very much the same as today, only that today is much more sophisticated. And of course, I'm very much interested in this subject in several ways. I believe we will not be talking about artificial intelligence per se, at least not me, because we have other people that are much better to do it than me. But I will see it from the point of view of culture and art, of course, but mostly culture and society, human civilization and society. I believe that this new artificial intelligence have captured culture. The culture world already have captured, in the sense that it is able to produce mostly of the things that humans have been doing for millennia. That means text, images, architecture, design, everything, films, videos, and is doing it not in a quite primitive way, but in a very sophisticated way, with a lot of imagination, which is a word terrible to use for a machine, but it's true, with a lot of imagination and competing with human production. Let's be quite honest, if for those who have worked with artificial intelligence, what comes out of artificial intelligence many times is much better than what humans do, much better. And we understand why it's much better. Why it's much better? It's because the machine is a genius. No. We must understand that this technology is based on machine learning, on teaching the machine with the knowledge, the history of human culture. So we gave these machines all the knowledge possible of the human culture. Myself, I'm a reader. I like very much books and read. And I don't know, but probably in my life I've read a few thousand books. This machine, I've read millions. So it's obvious that the machine knows much more things, but much more things than what I do after many years of learning, of reading, of coming to conferences, all that. The machine knows much more. Of course, people can say, but it's quantitative, knows a lot. in quantitative. But science have explained to us that quantitative very easily jumps to qualitative. That's what we are having now. But of course, it's not only that these machines are creative, are doing incredible things, they are competing with the human production, but they are also changing the culture itself, the mindset of the culture. So that they are creating, in a way, a new culture, which is based on our culture, the human culture, but where the machines are adding something and are changing to generate something new. Of course, we are still at the beginning. It will develop in the next years, but already we see it very well. Because, for example, and that's I have more. Okay. One of the things that we must understand is that this machine learning is based on huge amounts of data. This data is organized in data sets and so on. The people who started this technology, they went to look for data sets. They found mostly in the United States. So most of these machines learn from the knowledge of the United States. That's why the ChatGPT writes like an American student or academic. It's even for us European and for Portuguese, because Portuguese, as you see, like to jump from one thing to another. Immediately you recognize that ChatGPT, when you ask something, it says 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a typical American template, academic template. So that's normal. When you go to images, of course the images are mostly, for example, portraits. I had a portrait to show, but it doesn't matter. Portraits, they are of white people, Americans or Westerns, mostly. When you go to young, with a lot of Asian people now, also the young people, special. But old people, for example, it's not very easy to. For example, the other day I was trying, and I asked to make me a portrait of Eskimo. It was quite difficult. He didn't know what to do. He just gave me Chinese. He gave me something very strange. But he doesn't know very well what is Eskimo. Okay, so this means that we are also coming to a kind of normalization of culture based on Western culture and North American culture, of course, that's normal, and Western culture. That's for us, older people, with that we have learned many things during the life, it doesn't make much difference, because when we look, we see, I immediately can look to a text, understand that it was done in ChatGPT. It's very easy, because we understand the way that the ideas are organized. But young people don't know. They don't see the difference. They will take this as the thing. We already see this when we go, for example, as I try very much experiments with images, the kind of aesthetics of these portraits and these environments in all these apps that makes Midjourney and others that makes images, it's incredible. It's infantile, it's real infantile, very much biased to Asiatic, to Asian. In this case of image, if you ask in some of these for games and so, if you ask a portrait, comes a Chinese girl or a Japanese girl, mostly of times. So we are going to a kind of normalization of a new culture that will be the basis of what young people will consider culture. Is this very bad? No, it's not bad. I don't see it as bad. I even see it as good, in a way. For two reasons. First, because special Western culture is obsolete. That is clear for me for many years, since at least the 80s, that people are doing exactly the same thing, the same plays, the same films, the same music, the same shows, all the time. Only derivative and templates, and people, they just. But even more interesting than that is because the artificial intelligence will demand that we are really creative, that we are extraordinary, not just good. Good is not enough, because for good, they ask an app to do it, and it does it. So if you want to do something to compete with these machines, you must be really very good. You must be extraordinary. Okay.
Your time?
Yes.
You have a few more minutes if you want.
Now, okay, see if I...
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So, because I was afraid I was talking.
No worries.
I always talk too much, so I'm afraid. So, I don't see it as, I see it as an opportunity for an upgrade of human culture. Human culture is really, for many years, that nothing really happens. Of course, there is the power of publicity, money, market, and speculation. There is this power, but this power, as we know it, is relative. You take it 1, 2, 3, so you don't believe it anymore. So these operations of image and so this works for a while, because if we are really thinking about important things happening in culture for the last 50 years, you have like 2 or 3 things. It's not working anymore. So artificial intelligence is a big challenge, and it's a very good challenge, because it will make human artists. When I speak about artists, I speak all kinds of creative, making movies or making theater or making anything, design, anything. So artists in that sense, creative people, they must start doing really good things, innovative things, things with imagination, things extraordinary. I cannot go further than that.
No, that's fine. That's exactly where I wanted you to go to. Thank you so much, Leonel.
Okay.
So next we have Professor Oliveira. So the professor is a very well-known expert on machine learning and artificial intelligence, aside from being the author of numerous scientific papers. Did his initial training at Technical and his PhD at Berkeley. He's also an author of more popular-oriented literature, really good. I liked Digital Mind, the Digital Mind quite a bit, particularly, which was published by MIT Press. And the professor also has a long-standing column writing for Público, and he published recently a book called Ciência, sociedades, which translates to Science, Technology, and Society, in which he goes quite a bit into basically an upload of his polymathic brain, talking about all different subjects from energy to environment, artificial intelligence, how they intersect with culture. So yes, Professor, feel free.
Okay, well, good afternoon. So I will try to give you a little provocation. Leonel already said that very affirmatively that computers can create art. Of course, that varies a lot exactly what you consider art. But I'll try to give you some examples. It's working well, right here it's flashing, but otherwise it's working well. So the first time, so Ada Lovelace, she was a mathematician. She got curious about a machine that Babbage conceived. He never managed to build it, and she wrote a number of interesting pieces about what the machine could do if it was ever built. She wrote a number of programs that is well known. She was the translator of this particular article by Menabrea. She translated it into English, and she added a few notes. The article has like 9 or 10 pages, and the notes have like 20 pages, so they are a bit longer than the paper itself. And the notes are the most interesting part. The rest just describes the machine. And among the notes, there is this part where she asked whether the machine could actually act on other things and whether it could be creative or not. Okay? And she understood that the computer could, in general, act on any data and could actually, she argued that it could not be creative because it could only do the things that it was programmed to. Okay? But this was an argument that was picked up later by Alan Turing. So she wrote this: the analytical engine has no pretensions to originate anything. It can do whatever we know how to order it to perform. It can follow analysis, but basically it does only what they tell it to do. But Alan Turing, about 100 years later, picked up on this argument, and he argued that, yes, Ada Lovelace was right. The computer can only do what you tell it to do, but if you tell it to do very complex things, it will create things. Right? I mean, she could not imagine 1 century before that you could actually write a sequence of instructions so complex and so sophisticated that it will actually lead the machine to actually create something. And what we learned, and now let's see. So this was a symphony that was written by a machine. Right? It was performed live here. I don't know if we have the sound. We are not going to listen to the whole symphony. Okay. But it gives you an idea of what machines. Okay. So it was fully composed by a machine. And I also had other pieces on the style of Bach and on the style of the Beatles. This is basically to tell you that right now we could actually generate almost any form of art that we can imagine by looking at the statistics of the art and then generating something new with the same thing. It can be music, it can be a painting, it can be a text, it can be anything. So there is an important question whether this is actually art, or maybe better, whether it's the derivative art or can actually be good art, original art, and that is a question that I'm sure we can discuss. Behind all this is this idea of machine learning, this idea that if you are given enough examples of something, you can understand the statistics of that, and given some input, generate the corresponding output. This can be used, for instance, to understand what an image is, right? So but it can also be used in reverse, as I will show you, by understanding what images are. You can generate images from descriptions. Behind all this is something called, 2 types of technologies. For images, is mostly something called convolutional neural networks. Basically, mathematical structures where you put here an image and out comes something like the description of an image or some other analysis of the image. There is another type of architecture called the transformer, which is used in language. And what happens is that you can encode text and images together. So this is actually a transformer, this is another transformer. You can put images here and the corresponding description, or maybe not a description, maybe an analysis, right? These things are encoded jointly, and internally the machines build an internal representation of these images. For instance, like this is clip. So you give it an image and say it's a man standing on a rocky hill, or it's a bowl of food on a table, or whatever, right? A wooden statue on a pole. And it turns out that you can run this process in reverse. So instead of going from images to text, you can run this process in reverse, using something that is called diffusion models, basically, where you learn, so you can corrupt an image and go from an image to white noise, that doesn't represent anything. You can learn to correct this noise, to remove the noise, and you can condition this on the image that you want, and that means that you can, for instance, generate something like a corgi, which is a type of a dog, playing a flame-throwing trumpet, and out comes an image of a corgi playing a flame-throwing trumpet. You can imagine anything, and the system will basically create an internal representation of that and then generate. This is what is behind DALL-E, what is behind Midjourney, all these machines. The exact algorithms vary a little bit, but this is the basic idea. you can go from both images to internal representations, and you can reverse the process going from internal representations to. And the results are well known. This is a painting, if you call it, that won a competition in Colorado, a painting competition in Colorado. The title is Théâtre d'Opéra Spatial. This is a photography generated by one of these algorithms. That one, the title is this one, Pseudomnesia, the electrician. And it is supposed to represent an old photography, but it was actually generated by a computer, an old photography of a lady and this mother. So there's some description. The computer understands the description and generates the corresponding image. And this was a little image I generated, I think with a prompt, an impressionist style painting of Jesus and Lazarus. And I also did this. So the interesting question, philosophical question here is this art? Can we call this art? Or is this just statistics? Now, it turns out, I hope this is not mine, it's not. So the point is that I think the difference between art and statistics is actually very thin, right? Because any artist generates works of art according to what he has seen in his life, to the statistics that his or her brain have seen on his or her life. And therefore, the difference is a difference in how far can you go from the statistics that influenced you over your lifetime. If you are a very creative artist, maybe if you are Picasso, or if you are Beethoven, or a scientist, Einstein, then maybe you can move far away from the influences that you've seen in your life. If you are a not so original artist, maybe you just pursue on whatever you have seen, and you don't do very creative. The question, of course, and the interesting question is, can machines create art if everything they do is just generate more things following the statistics that they have seen? And as we heard, they have seen a lot of stuff. Right? These machines have seen probably all the paintings in the world, millions of photographies, hundreds of millions of books, so they have seen all of this. So the question is, can they generate really, truly original stuff in art, in science, in literature? And the answer to that question, we still don't have the answer to that. If you have interacted with ChatGPT or with some of those systems, you will see that in some cases they create very derivative works that are not original at all. But I've also interacted with it, and I asked him to combine two different things that were probably never combined before, and he does a very good job at creating a synthesis of that, right? A couple of days ago, I asked him to create what is the relation between two theories of consciousness that I have never seen related before, and he generated a text that was as good as I could write, or probably better than I could write. So it's probably premature to say that machines cannot create art. Maybe they cannot create truly original art, but they can certainly create art. And as Leonel was saying, for us humans, the challenge will be to stay ahead of the curve and be able to create things that are innovative and that are not simply following up the statistics that we have seen in our lifetime. And I think, but to be fair, if we want to be really fair and answer these questions, whether machines can or cannot create art, I think we should follow the idea of Turing. So Turing was addressing the question of, can machines be intelligent? And he said, we are always going to be biased, right? We are always going to say that machines cannot be intelligent because they are just hardware and we are humans, so we are always going to be biased. So what we should do is hide the person and the machine behind the wall, okay? Talk to them, and if we cannot distinguish between the person and the machine, then we should recognize that the machine is intelligent. If we can distinguish between the person and the machine, then it's okay, the machine is not intelligent. And the argument of Turing is, only by hiding the true nature of the being, right? Is it a person, is it a machine? Can we be fair in assessing the abilities, in this case the intelligence, although its paper also applies somewhat to conscious behavior. But now I'm using sort of a Turing test for art. Right? And I'm not going with paintings, you have all seen paintings. I'm going with poetry. My question is, can you read this? More or less? Yeah. So my question is, which of these poems is by Shakespeare? I'm going to run a vote in a minute, so just have a careful look. I know it's a long poem, but you get the gist, right? So, who thinks the left one is by Shakespeare? Who thinks the right one is by Shakespeare? Okay. No, it's actually the left one, so most of you got it wrong. And
but is it late Shakespeare?
maybe you can do better on this one. The question here is, which one of these is by it? Okay, at the time sort of. So who thinks the one on the left is by it? Who thinks the one on the right is by it? Okay. Well, currently ChatGPT is more it and more Shakespeare than the originals, because this one is by it, this one is by ChatGPT. So I think that made my point, right? I mean, if we really hide these things behind a wall, it's very hard. It's going to be very hard to distinguish art created by computer and art created by humans. And I guess that answers the original question in the positive way. Right? Machines can create art, whether it's truly original, truly innovative, or is more on continuity with the given school and the given culture. It's an open question. But the machines have one advantage over us. I mean, these things, ChatGPT read all the poems by it. He read all the poems by Shakespeare. He actually read all the poems by all the famous poets in the world. It's something that we can never do. So when we ask it to reproduce something on the style, it can do probably better than any human. Maybe it cannot go out and write something in the style of Saramago. In the style of Saramago, it could write, of course, because you read all of Saramago, right? But if Saramago did not exist, probably could not create something on the style of Saramago. But so, okay, that's it. I rest my point. So I think machines can create art, and there will be a role for humans. And I mean, as a friend of mine saying, just because there are forklifts, it did not end up alterophilism, right? So we can still do art, even though machines can also do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So next up we have António Costa. So António has a PhD in biochemistry by the University of Coimbra, and after being a researcher and a university teacher for a while, he went into the public engagement and science communication field for quite a good many years. He was a member of Ciência here in Portugal, and then he moved to the bigger fields of the European Union. From 2017 to 2022, he was the Director of Science Mediation and Education at Universidade. He's currently the head of Science and Society at Instituto Gulbenkian Ciência, and he also teaches in the Science Communication Masters at FCSH Nova, which is the oldest Science Communication Masters in Portugal. He also happens to be the supervisor of my second PhD. And he's particularly interested in developing new ways to promote the connections between science and democracy, and to tackle public misconceptions and anti-science attitudes as well, which is something I can say that he teaches very enthusiastically.
Thank you. Okay, let's see if this works. Well, first of all, I'm not going to talk about artificial intelligence, but anyway. And thank you for inviting me, and in spite of the fact that we work in the same institution, is not justification. We didn't talk before, but I do have two references that you used in your initial introduction to this day, which shows that some of the topics are a little bit on the same, very general. Actually, I'm going to use a few references that have been used here. So, when I saw art, science, and society, well, the new thing in this session is the society part of it, because we've been talking about art and science. Now, what is society here? And well, the first thing is that in these three words there is a common thing, which is they are simple words but very hard to define. Each one of them, art, science, and society. If you try to find out exactly the definition for any one of them, you'll be in trouble. But anyway, I think we all know a little bit about what we're talking about when we talk about these things. And I thought I would start on a cheerful note. And if I was thinking, if we, the way we treat and honor dead people, our deads, has something to do with how we consider them in real life, and I'm looking at as well because of obvious reasons, then science is a little bit in trouble. This is a picture from the Père Lachaise in Paris, a famous cemetery with lots of famous people buried there. And I don't know if it's still the case, but I was there 5 or 6 years ago. And you can buy at the entrance, you can buy a map of all the famous people and where they are. And certainly there are quite a few scientists there, but you have in bold, so really highlighted, the ones that you should not miss. And there is not one single scientist in this list, okay? So everyone else is there, Oscar Wilde, Jim Morrison, to name a few French people that are buried there. But these ones, for instance, Cuvier, Fourier, Gay-Lussac, a fantastic naturalist, an important one, a mathematician, and a chemist and physicist. All of them were actually basically physicists somehow. They're there, and that you find them if you really have an interest in science, because otherwise you're not led to them. There is an interesting case with Fresnel, which was a physicist. He was responsible for a lot of, well, he was basically responsible for coming up with the idea of the wave nature of light. And there's this interesting thing. One of the pictures I took from the internet, the one with the stones saying Fresnel, spelling his name. The other one is a picture that I took, which is, the name is with small sticks. So it seems that someone or a group of people kind of have this idea of going and putting the name of Fresnel with objects. So it's not only the pilgrimage to the Jim Morrison tomb, but also Fresnel has this way. Anyway, this is to say that we do have a problem in society with how we look at scientists. A problem, I think it's too strong a word, but anyway. And here is the first reference, C.P. Snow. So in 1959, C.P. Snow was a physicist and an artist, by the way, a writer at least. He came up with this communication in a meeting and then published it about the fact that we have two cultures, the scientific one and the culture, normal, so to speak, culture. And we have a divide there that we should try to bridge. Mind you, I was born in 1959, so now you know my age, and I think it's kind of, I'm really somehow upset that we're still talking about C.P. Snow. And two of us have talked about C.P. Snow. So it's 60-something years that we've been trying to bridge the gap between art and science, and we're still mentioning C.P. Snow. Now, mind you, there is something that, and forgive me if I'm being a little bit too, I don't know, convinced here, but I think that something that C.P. Snow was right at the time is no longer valid. And I don't have the paragraph, but you showed it, actually, where he mentions that people, if asked about Shakespeare and about literature, for instance, they are able to answer. They have minimal culture, but when asked about the third law or second law of thermodynamics, they don't know what it is. And this is dangerous. What I think no longer applies between this divide, or should not apply, and I'm really not worried about that as a science communicator at least, is that people don't know about scientific content and about the scientific body of knowledge. I think that the divide goes much deeper than that, and it's much more important than that. That people don't know what the second law of thermodynamics is. Tough luck. A lot of people don't know the works of Shakespeare, and now ChatGPT can actually do a good job about that. So it's not really the divide. I think it's not about the content and the knowledge of content, it's about the attitude, and it's about the behavior. And this is a little bit what I would like to discuss. So let me, from the point of view, I'm going to kind of be a little bit very doing a little bit of caricature about things about science and art in science. But from the point of view of society, from the point of view of the public, what usually comes up as science in art, in this sense, is more or less this. An artist is looking at science, and the artist produces an outcome, an object, that then is shown to the public. And the public is seeing something that is produced by an artist who was looking at scientists or at science, and then this informs the artwork. There are more complex relations that we can find in this, obviously, and it's not as simple as this. And for instance, a good example, relatively recently, that I can come up with is the work of Tomás Saraceno that was in the Ballet Tokyo, where he, and this picture is more or less shows it, where he was, one of the things that was there, he was using spiders to build spider webs. And I mean, it was a whole room of this. It was absolutely amazing. And I was indirectly involved in this because my team was actually taking care of the spiders. We need to take care of them. And actually helping him with something, because he came up with these structures because he was using different spiders on top of each other. That is to say, you have one spider building a spider web, and then it removes that spider and puts another one that uses the first spider web as the structure to build the second one. And since different species have different structures for the spider webs, the result is something like this. So this was clearly something that was a more complex relation. And by the way, I know from recent exchanges at the IGC and not only, that, for instance, his methodology to analyze spider webs was then used by scientists to study behavior and to study physiology of behavior. So there is kind of a richer interaction going here. The question is the public, is the society seeing this very rich relationship? Most of the public, if not all of the people that went to this exhibition, obviously they were amazed. It was fantastic. It was something of really good. But what they saw is that this is an artwork that incidentally is dealing with scientific things. The other way around, art in science, we usually what we get is this kind of thing, which is scientists are looking at art and then producing an outcome. Usually for the public, something boring, like explaining the color theory or the perception of 3 dimensions in an otherwise flat surface, like a painting. And this is what it comes up, what it really means to a lot of people about the relation of science and art. Obviously, things can be a little bit more complex than this, and I hope this plays. Not. What you're hearing, what you're hearing is the musification, so to speak, of the protein structure of the COVID protein, the famous protein. It's really something. It's really interesting. I'll stop this. If you want to hear. So this, for instance, is something that this is easily done, so to speak. You have one sound for each amino acid, and you have the structure. The thing that would come up from this would be awful to our ears. That's why we call it musification, because then there are musicians that take the simple sounds that come from this structure and put it with accompaniment with other instruments so it is pleasant to our ears. This is obviously is great for science communication, for instance. It's very attractive. And you can do this with DNA, you can do this with several other things. But it goes deeper than this. And one of the things that is happening is that scientists realized that if a structure is translated into music in a way that is kind of pleasant to us, then they are able to identify abnormalities in the structure just by listening to the music. And so this adds another dimension to what this relation between art and science is, except that this is very difficult to really translate to the public. So when it comes to art, science, and society, it would be interesting if we could go one step further and really show how rich this interaction can be. And I'm bringing in an example, which is the Science Gallery, originally in Dublin, and now it's closed down, and it's probably not going to open, I don't know. There's a lot of discussion about this, which is unfortunate. But anyway, there are other science galleries, Science Gallery London, Science Gallery New York, and this was perhaps something of the most exciting thing that happened in a long time in terms of buildings and structures and institutions dedicated to art and science. And Science Gallery produces exhibitions with very challenging topics. This one, I just chose this one because I happened to visit this one and I had quite a few pictures of it. And this was about biohacking. But they have others about fake, about risk, about, usually the thing is, they don't have artists looking at science or science looking at art. They have an issue, they have a topic, and have the combination of the two eyes, of the two sets of expertise and approaches to look at the same topic. And this makes the whole difference. And they come up with things that are very provocative, like this, and this is the second image. I mean, the Heather Dewey Haybark, and already explained that she was using DNA found in cigarette butts and other chewing gum and things like this to rebuild, reconstruct human faces that belong to these, to whom this DNA belonged. The second one is also was very provocative, was basically exploring the real possibility that human females could give birth to dolphins, for instance. And there is this is actually a video of a woman giving birth to a living dolphin inside a swimming pool. Obviously, this is made up. But anyway, technically, the possibility exists, and the challenge for the visitor was, how am I going to face this? How am I going to react to this? How am I going to accept or not this? Suppose that dolphins were endangered species, and this was a way of saving them. Well, and the third one, personally, is something that really stuck in my mind because I love cheese. I'm really addicted to cheese, and there was this exhibition with several types of cheese. You know, blue cheese, things like camembert and other things, French cheese, very appetizing, very nice. The only difference is that these cheese mentioned how they were produced. And for instance, this one was produced using the bacteria that was taken out from the belly button of Mrs. I don't know who. And another cheese was fermented using the bacteria extracted from the feet of Mr. blah, blah, blah. Now, you know, and I know, and I'm a biologist by nature, it doesn't matter. Really, these are just bacteria. They were cultivated, they were purified, the fermentation is the same, and they smell divine, but I cannot eat them, sorry. So this kind of challenging that this kind of exhibition and these kind of interactions put towards people in society are something very rich. And this is the bridge. I mean, it's not that everyone needs to know about the second law of thermodynamics, or everyone needs to know about, you know, modern art or contemporary art or whatever. It's this kind of bridge that really is fundamental. And so, instead of these models, what we are trying to do actually, with some people, is something that has been done, and just shown you the Science Gallery, which is having this. So art, science, and the public, and I put public question mark because there is no such thing as public. There are people that work in different things with different competencies, and we cannot have abstract entities there. So artists, scientists, and people with other competencies, historians, politicians, people working in McDonald's or Starbucks or things like this, with their competencies, looking at a question and having an outcome, and this outcome then can feedback in all these fields with all these competencies. So in the end, when I was preparing this, I was trying to figure out, well, is there something that I could come up with a word that really symbolizes what I'm trying to come up with? And I was looking at pictures of, scientists and artists, and I just kind of looked for Duchamp. And this, I didn't make this. I mean, I put the two together, but the similarities between the two pictures were what came up. I don't know if artificial intelligence had anything to do with it, but anyway, these two things happened. And it just happened that it's curious because it's, there are some discussions, I think now they are solved, about if the fountain, the urinal, was really Duchamp's idea or not. But we can also say that the finches, Darwin finches, are not exactly the best example to talk about how Darwin came up with the evolution theory, because it was a later thought for him. But I thought, well, this is one of the rare occasions where actually I think more people will know about the scientist than about the artist, which is interesting. And though they never met, for obvious reasons, temporal ones at least, they have something in common. They were challenging concepts. They were disruptive in society. And for art, I think that we have no doubt, if you deal with art, that art is very, very, very frequently disruptive. I wouldn't say the more the better, but anyway, it is disruptive. It tries to be disruptive. And for science, sometimes we come up with the idea that science is neutral. And I would just like to say, no, it's not. And that is something that art and science do share, is that they are both disruptive. If you think about evolution, if you think about Copernicus, if you think about no matter what, if you think about artificial intelligence, if you think all the major questions and discussions that we are having about science is exactly because science and knowledge is in itself disruptive. And this is something that is shared by art and science, and I think that this power of the two together is something that really, really we should make society work with scientists and artists and on these kind of things. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Actually, the first lesson you learn when you start writing academically on the public understanding of science is that in any word processor you have to, when the first time you write publics, you have to click the right click at spelling because it doesn't like you writing languages. I'll just ask a first question, then I'll open it up because I think it goes into and feeds quite a bit from your last big word, which was disruption. My question is, and I was like chewing on this throughout the three talks, do we actually need, so these language models, AI, machine learning models, do you think they will be able to create something that is completely novel without the use of previously existing substrates? Because you all spoke a bit on that, like obviously they're grabbing all of this, they're creating new statistics, and whether they can come up with new methods of inquiry and something that is truly novel and can ask really interesting questions. Because Antonio, you went into this a bit as well, this whole issue of like how art and science as a discipline used to be, which was, when an artist goes into a laboratory, they find an interesting microscopy picture, and that's pretty much it. But what is potentially very interesting about this is, the new methods, the way of creating new ways of asking new questions. So that is my big, enormous question for the panel.
Artists and scientists have one thing in common, many things, but one. They think about the future. The future is always a very important thing for an artist and for a scientist. So we cannot look at artificial intelligence as it is, but as it can be in the future. At the moment, we are at what we can call the symbiotic moment, where I need the machine to have something, the machine needs me to make a prompt and ask it something. So we are in this. Until we will be in this process of symbiotic, it's true that machines will have a lot of difficulty to make something really totally new. It will be very difficult because, first of all, they are dependent on our input. That's the first. But not only because of that. But there is something going on already quite interesting. As we have talked, the machines learn with human knowledge, with human data produced by humans. The humans have produced enormous amounts of data, and machines have learned from it. But machines are now making also new data every day, millions, trillions of new data every day. So they will be able soon, if not already in part, to use their own data, the data that they generated, to build things. They will be, this is happening already, even once again. If you have tried to use these apps, special, I use the ones that make images, I've used them. Of course, you can just ask a simple thing, a cat and the dog, it makes a cat and the dog. But if you go on further working, and you go giving the app images, because as you know, most of these apps, you can start with an image. If you start with an image that was produced by the app, and then you start getting really amazing things. Because the machine is creating based on its own creations. This is already curious. It's not autonomous, because we need still to input. But I believe that soon will be autonomous. And then you really will have some extraordinary things that no one expects. The only issue that probably because for me the question if something is art or is not art is not an issue for more than 100 years in art. After Duchamp put Urinol in an exhibition, what is art, what is not art. It's not a discussion for artists for more than 100 years. If I put this bottle in a museum, it's art. Here it's a bottle of water, so it's not a question for artists. It's not the issue. The issue may be, is it interesting to put this or not? Okay. But, so for me, this is not an issue. What is art, what is not art is not an issue. The only issue that can be quite interesting is the day that machines can make art by themselves, will they want to do it or not? For what? Because society finds interesting to have guys like me who makes art and they think it's interesting, but what I do is nothing. I create things, I invent things. Is this useful? I don't know. I also don't care, but I don't know. So machines will also want to make art or not. My robots, I use robots that make art. If I ask them, they probably say, I don't want to do this. So that's quite something to discuss in a few years. In the next thing. Okay, I'm sorry.
Anyone else want to contribute?
Okay.
I can just give a note. I mean, the current model, like language models, but also visual systems, the diffusion and so on, they have no autonomous will, right? They have no will at all, much less free will. So they have no motivation, they have no plan, so it does not I think the answer is obvious, that they cannot create anything that is really new and that they have not seen something related before. But in a way, the same is true for human beings, right? Nobody can actually create anything that has not seen anything related before. So all art, all science, all literature is in a way derivative. It can be more or less enough. No. The ability of humans to innovate is still much, much larger than what machines can do today. There is no doubt about that, because of what I said. Because, I mean, language models, they don't even have a state, right? Every time you start with one, you're starting exactly on the same place. So they don't even remember that you talked to them before. But I think that we'll have fairly soon, and I would guess in less than a decade, but maybe much less than a decade. We are working on that actually. We'll have models like this that have an internal state, right? They'll have a memory. They will have some structures that may enable them to have some sort of consciousness and so on. And once you have that, right, they will be more similar to humans in the sense that they will have long-term targets, long-term desires, long-term objectives, and they can pursue them. Still, they will be trained on human data, mostly human data, and they cannot go very far from that. But humans can also not go very far from that, because humans were also trained on human data. So in the end, I think we'll have humans creating new things, and we'll have, in some cases, machines creating new things, even in science and in art. Now, art is somewhat less objective than science, in that science we can assess the scientific value of something. I mean, it's difficulties, but we can assess, right? We can assess the technological value of something, and we can certainly assess the economic value of something. But suppose we have a system that, you know, just paints paintings and puts them on Amazon and sells them or whatever, right? And then if you can make money out of that, so is it less of an artist? Because so I think in the end we'll have artificial systems that will do many creative things that will have value to society, that will be viewed as art and science in some cases. And hopefully, my only worry is that humans will stop. Most humans will stop having interest in that, right? Because they no longer have to work, or don't have to work so hard, because the economic value will be there and so on. So, but hopefully there'll be a significant number of humans that will still have interest in creating. But when I see, for instance, when I see the new crop of students that arrive into my classes and so on, I sometimes worry a bit that they are too not too ambitious, right? Because they are used to using the platforms and apps and so on, and they don't look as ambitious in thinking out of the box as I would hope them to be. But maybe this is just, I'm old and I mean, they don't read books these days. Right? They don't read books. The machines read books. The humans don't. The young humans don't read books. So, at least not the ones that are my students. So I worry a bit that there are cartoons about that, right? The machines reading books and the humans just looking at the cell phone. So let's hope that's not the future.
Yeah. Sympathize.
Well, obviously I'm not in that field, but I honestly I think that one of the things that sometimes we tend to forget is exactly, I mean, we think about what machines will be able to do in the future and how they will evolve and how they will change. And sometimes we tend to forget how we change accordingly. And I think that it's a much more symbiotic, and it will be much more symbiotic relation that sometimes we picture. I mean, the use of this has changed the way of how the fact that we have a computer in our pockets changed the way we discuss things, changed the way we talk, changed the way, and not only for the bad. I mean, sometimes we have this resistance to new things, and I keep telling that. I remember recently there was a discussion in a meeting of museum people discussing about how good it would be to have force people to leave their smartphones outside an exhibition, and I was completely against it. And I said, sorry, I use my smartphone every time I go into an exhibition. I want to know more about what I have in front of me. And I use it in a productive way. It's not that I am distracted playing games on smartphone. Some people might do that, but it's better to do that than just be sitting down on a bench. But what I'm saying is that, and I do have a question actually for the other people, is it the right term to use artificial intelligence? Because what we're talking about is basically human intelligence translated and translated and transformed into a machine, and that values the ways of learning, the difficulties that we were saying and mentioning about creativity in machines and originality is the same thing for humans, basically.
I mean, don't take my comment too seriously. I realize that, well, first of all, this opens an entire world of knowledge to anyone. Right? And the reason why we are all addicted to this is because of that, right? Because you can do wonderful things with this that 20 years ago we could not do. The worry is only that some sort of deep knowledge that we, my generation, thought that we could get by reading books or by maybe listening to a symphony or so on, the sort of deep understanding or appreciation of literature and art, I think is becoming harder for the new generations. I think it's a fact. I'm not saying that no one reads books. It's not true, but certainly the books are on the way out, right? So the question is whether humans will adapt, for sure, and I think they bring so many good things, right? They learn so fast using this is wonderful. The only question is, I mean, we also have machines that will be able to learn fast. So the question is, will we have the depth of knowledge and of understanding most, right? That is required, or a significant fraction of humanity will be addicted to relatively superficial entertainment modes, and that is my worry. It's not that humanity will be superseded, really. I think humans are very, very smart and they'll be able to learn, but when we think maybe it will be just 10% of the humans, right? So, but maybe this is not much worse than it was in the past, right? 90% of the people worked in the fields and so on.
Exactly. And about books also one thing. I also like books a lot. But probably we should not say that the young people don't read. They read a lot. Not only books, but they read a lot, much more than when we were young.
They read a lot on this support.
Exactly, they read a lot. They are all day reading stupid things, interesting things. It doesn't matter, but they are reading. And we also read a lot of stupid things when we were young, but in books. So, because you must see, our day when I was a teenager, what? I was all day doing stupid things, and then I was like 1 hour reading from a book. These kids today, they are all day reading, from morning to night. So the reading, the book is a fetish from our generation. But I would say that people, they have other interests, like we have other different interests from our parents. That's normal, that's evolution. So I don't see it as that. I'm probably more worried about what I've said, that is a kind of normalization of the taste, normalization of the thinking, the mindset, the normalization of the mindset. That's probably a bit more worried, because then we lose diversity. That's probably a worse thing. We lose diversity, because when everybody's saying the same thing, it's not interesting for the society. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, but I agree with Arlindo as well, in the sense that you know, that what you get from a certain type of literature and a certain type of music and a certain type of culture, which is, you know, not as perennial and is deep in the sense that anyone throughout generations can connect to it, I guess is harder to find. And if you're, or maybe it isn't, if you're looking at TikTok or whatever it is. No, I mean, I think there's a lot to say in terms of like how people, this panel is called Art, Science, and Society, could be technology, in terms of like how our brains are co-adapting and will evolve together with technology in parallel with it. When I see kids nowadays, you know, from 0 to 5, with the screen, like I go into a restaurant and parents have their kids with a smartphone, or has a neuroscientist and someone who appreciates development. My question is, how is this person going to develop into an adult how different is their brain development going to be compared with previous generations and stuff. But anyway, I'll open to questions from the, yeah, please. Yeah.
I want to continue exactly this.
Yeah.
I had a question about quality of information. So one of the ways that I was reading recently that how to describe these new transformers in CNNs that do deep learning, fantastic, beautiful things, they are basically lossy compressions of knowledge that we had up until the moment they were trained. The problem now is that they are starting to generate knowledge, but they generate the average knowledge. So they're very good, and there is something I think I missed in your talk, which is execution is perfect, which is something that we don't have, even if we are kind of an embodiment of our own experiences and our own priors. We have flaws in execution, which machines don't have, and that puts us in different standing. But how will, as these models become more ubiquitous, how will this influence the next generation of models? And by the same token, we were talking about books. I agree with you. People are still ingesting information, different medium of information, but we're still telling stories to each other through movies, through memes, through Facebook or TikTok posts or whatever. But it's still a way of living vicariously and learning from other people. The question is about quality of information. Is this information the same quality? Is this gonna deteriorate? Because I know models will tend to be stuck in local minima, and then you have to perturb them in order to find something different. And if this is all the information that we're consuming, how is the next iteration going to be?
Very quick. Talking about quality of information. Have you lately opened a TV? So people say, ChatGPT makes a lot of mistakes. Have you seen the newspapers, the television? It's all lies or everything wrong. They say something, the next day they say that it was nothing.
That's exactly my
So
point.
I'm sorry, it's not worse than it is already with the media. It's not worse. And as an artist, you know that when ChatGPT makes mistakes, we call hallucinations. What I like most in ChatGPT is hallucination, because it's the artist side, it's the creative side. So I don't worry much about that, because still in this moment, when you ask ChatGPT to make you a text, you should read the text, correct it, and put something of you. It's not that you take it complete. That's the minimum. So if you don't do that, there are mistakes. Okay, but that's your fault, not of ChatGPT. I'm sorry.
If I may take a shot at this, I think you put it right. Especially language models, they are really a lossy compression of the input. But I think the most useful way to look at a language model is a random text generator that generates texts according to very long-term statistics, right? So we should not look at a language model as a knowledge source, nor a search engine, nor a database. And I think if people knew about this, but I think the next generation will be better, right? Because you can use language models to interact with knowledge sources, right? To interact with databases, search engines is already happening, to interact with physics and engines that know how to do physics and math, right? And once you do that, I think it will be much like this sort of average that you talked about, which is really random text generation. I think it will be less serious, right? Some people worry that, okay, but in between there will be lots of trash in the internet and these models will be trained on that and they will get even worse. Those are worries that are taking place today. But I think it's probably not that serious. In the end, we'll have, in 2 or 3 years, we'll have better models. Not just language models with symbolic substrates. And then I think there will be fairly good sources of knowledge, right? Much better than they are now. Right now, you can only, I use them as only, as you were saying, take this, write something, and then you see whether it's right, and sometimes you do a good job. But I don't ask them math or physics or anything, because they can do it. But I think they will improve rapidly as you connect them with symbolic systems that know what they are doing. For instance, you can do math with them. Right now, they interact with wolfram alpha, And you can do very good math, and it's not just statistical. It understands the right question to do to all from alpha, gets the answer, and puts it in plain English. And I think this will happen in many domains. So hallucinations will become less of a problem. Bad quality information will become less of a problem.
Just to follow up, sorry, I cannot resist. What about the artificial limits that we're imposing on the outputs because of adoption?
The artificial?
Limits. Sorry, I cannot answer this question.
Oh. Yeah, so these models have been, because they are random test generators, they can generate a lot of stuff that they should, right? Racist or whatever. And so these companies are trying to limit their ability to generate creative and random text by saying you cannot talk about this, you cannot talk about that, and so on. Right? This goes into prompts, also goes into fine-tuning and so on. But that is limiting, right? That is sort of a censure that we also impose on ourselves, right? So it's not that different. They can still generate a lot of text, right? A virtually infinite number of texts.
We have 2 questions here.
Thank you for this. I'm incredibly ignorant regarding this topic. And I have 2 questions. Maybe the first is a very quick question to answer. And it's why is talking about AI so scary? Personally, I feel some fear, like as a writer, as an artist. I feel this fear of the unknown and how it works, and I don't know how to answer myself. And the next question is regarding the being extraordinary as a norm. How will that pressure apply for the future of psychology, for example? Maybe you can help with that question.
I can have a shot at the first, and then I'll leave the second to one of my colleagues. So the term artificial intelligence was coined in 1956. It was a workshop, and they defined. I think it was a good marketing decision. If they have called it, and if it's stuck, like applied statistics, you'll probably be not so afraid, right? Applied statistics doesn't look so frightening as artificial intelligence. Right? So, but really AI, modern AI in particular, is basically applied statistics, right? Very sophisticated statistics, to be fair, but applied statistics. So I think part of that fear comes from our understanding, our deep understanding that intelligence is a very important thing, right? This intelligence led us to control the world, dominate the world over less intelligent species. And when we think about intelligence, if something comes that is more intelligent than us, may dominate us, right? So I think the fear that is a fear, or this uncertainty about AI, is associated with that. Maybe with our understanding that intelligence is a dominating characteristic, and if it comes to become a characteristic of machines, then maybe we'll be in trouble. But to be fair, today's artificial intelligence is much more about statistics than about true intelligence, right? True intelligence is something way more complex, way more multidimensional than what we know how to do today. We have good language models. We are starting to have some reasonable vision models, but true intelligence has much more than that, right? And so we are still not there. Now, nobody knows if we get there in 10 years, in 100 years, in 200 years, nobody really knows. But I think that the reason for that fear is that, right? I mean, maybe if we are no longer the only intelligent species on Earth, we are going to have problems. I think that's where it comes from. Even though I think what we have now is not true intelligence. And I'll leave the second one as well.
Could you just rephrase it, or that, for me to understand a little bit better?
Yeah. So we were talking about being extraordinary,
yep,
and all this pressure. And as a psychology student, I'm concerned about that pressure, mainly in artists. Like how, in the future, like in the long run, how can we deal with that? How can we work with that kind of pressure, like being against the artist, against the AI, for example?
It's not against. Why is against?
Like
it's not against. It's another artist. You have you are already competing with mostly of the other artists. That's normal. So you have one more. not less.
Okay.
Is one more artist, which, by the way, is a machine. But
just incidental.
Because we have to close at 3:30. One last question there.
Hi. I'm not a scientist, so I'm sorry if the context seems a bit weird, but I'm kind of curious about something concerning the future of artificial intelligence and multimedia, which has to do with its potential misuse in particular. I'm talking, of course, about deepfakes and things of that nature. I mean, there's been a resurgence of the internet of voice models using famous celebrities and even politicians. There's photo manipulation available at our fingertips. And sometimes I wonder, I mean, we live in a complicated world these days. It's not entirely hard to imagine less scrupulous people with access to these tools, which we don't know how they'll be in the future, but they'll probably be even better than they are now, and probably more accessible too. Do you foresee a problem here?
yeah, you open the television and you see the problem. It's already on television every day. Things that didn't happen and they show you as real, and it didn't happen. So, okay, it's already being done. So what's the, okay, we must be smart.
Yeah, there's plenty of disinformation already, right? It's not like there is a lack of disinformation now, right? So the point is, but studies have shown that people are getting harder to misinform because people don't believe in anything anymore.
Exactly.
Right? So it may get a little bit worse, but it's already, I mean, people are already aware that they cannot trust anything that they cannot verify independently. Right? So having a video of, I don't know, Costa, António Costa saying something, I mean, in a few years maybe that's very easy to create, still not, but maybe a few. But then I think we'll be very suspicious of those videos. We'll have to find independent verification and so on. It's already easy today to write a text saying that I know António Costa eats children for breakfast, right? So you can write that. It's harder to do the video, right? But we probably wouldn't believe the text, so we wouldn't believe the video.
It's a good job for the future. Someone it's good jobs in the future.
I think you're being a little bit optimistic at times.
I was going to say the same.
I'm not usually pessimistic, but in this case, I am a little bit, because I don't think that the problem is it goes deeper than that. It's not a matter of information and of quality of information, by the way, I would say. And it's not a problem of deep fake or things like this. It's because we are living in a society where actually what is true or not is not relevant. And so for the most part, if you look at big discussions and big controversies and big things that are being discussed and everything, it's not a matter of giving the right information or having people know the right information anymore. Because even if you give the right information, the discussion will go on. So it's, and on that sense, I think on that particular field, I think there is a very interesting book called The Scientific Attitude from a philosopher of science from the MIT. And I think it applies both to science and applies to art also, which is the attitude that we need to work on. And maybe, I don't know, where artificial intelligence comes on this. But it's the capacity. It's not because we don't have enough information or don't have enough certainties that we have problems in the discussions. It's because we have too much certainties and too much information that we have problems. Everyone is sure about something. So the scientific attitude is actually the capacity of questioning the information that you have, no matter the source. And art is also going a little bit on that. So I think that is this kind of attitude of being able, no matter the source of, it's not being fooled or choosing the right information. It's looking at information and thinking about it.
We have to, it's 3:30, so to close, we can speak outside. I would recommend Joana Sá's paper that came out in Science this month, which is precisely talking on this. Human behavior. Yeah, exactly. Nature human behavior. Sorry, yours was in Science, Nature human behavior. I was looking at you. Which looks precisely into this, and it's a very, very, very good read. I would like to thank the panelists, and we will break for half an hour, and after coffee break, we will be back at 4.